Today's topic is about idealism in international relations. For the past sessions, we talked about realism theory, including national power, power balance, and national interests. Then actually, realism also covers structural realism, which focuses on structures and models in international systems, such as stable system and the revolutionary system by Henry Kissinger, the core system and periphery system by Emmanuel Wallerstein. Some other scholars also put forward the monogeneous system and the heterogeneous system, agricultural system and industrial system, plural, bipolar, and unipolar system. Behaviorism is also one branch of realism. It explains a nation's foreign policy based on data analysis and probability, such as game theory, which talks about zero-sum theory and non-zero-sum. In zero-sum theory, between two opponents, something gained for one side is something lost for the other, and something lost for one is something gained for the opposite, without compromise or win-win. In game theory, there are two well-known models, chickens and the prisoner dilemma. In chickens, it studies all the scenarios for the case that with two cars driving head-on to research the bottom line of confrontation for the big powers, such as Cuban Missile Crisis in October 1962. And in prisoner dilemma, is mainly for analyzing the prisoners to confess or not confess, used to arms control negotiations for America and the Soviet in Cold War. But idealism is totally different. In the book The Old Man and the Sea, Santiago always reminds himself, my big fish should be somewhere, which is very similar to idealism. Idealism can also be called liberalism. It is originated from Renaissance and Enlightenment in Europe, with the beliefs of social progress, human being rationality, and morality. To liberalism, a global order shouldn't be in a status of anarchy. Regulations and rules are needed for a better world. The early liberalism focused on a notion that rule of law and a power of balance, with representatives such as British John Locke, the French Montesquieu and Rousseau, and German Immanuel Kant. John Locke, the British philosopher who was born in 1632, he believed all men born equal, with natural rights like life, freedom, and property. He was the first to advocate government power separation of legislative, executive, and diplomacy. Montesquieu is the founder of Western legal system. In 1689, he was born in a French noble family. In 1748, his book, The Spirit of Law, was published, stating that law is the embodiment of a human reasoning, and he definitely put forward a power trinity like legislative, executive, and judicial. Rousseau, French philosopher born in 1712, and his masterpiece on social contract is a guideline for Western political and legal system. Immanuel Kant, the founder of German classical philosophy, was born in 1724. In his book, he also advocated the ideas like world citizen, the world federal, and non-interference to sovereign nations. Yet the most well-known representative of idealism is U.S. President Woodrow Wilson, who was born in 1856 in Virginia. In college, he majored in law study and later took teaching positions in Hopkins University and Princeton University. In 1902, he was selected as president of Princeton University. In 1910, as state governor of New Jersey, and in 1912, as Democratic candidate to be U.S. president. During First World War, in his speech on January 8, 1918, he proposed the 14 points, like open diplomacy, freedom of the seas, removal of the economic barriers, reduction of armaments, creation of an association with nations. After the war, Wilson insisted on attending the Paris Peace Conference, regardless of the fierce domestic objections. Another delegation members included President Advisor Colonel House, State Secretary Robert Lansing, and former U.S. Army Chief of Staff Tasker Bliss, and American diplomat Republican Henry White. Wilson didn't believe in the Republicans, so in choosing the delegation members, he refused considering Republican candidates, even as the former Republican President William Taft and Chairman of Senate Foreign Affairs Committee Henry Larch, but for which he paid heavily. For most of the parliament system in Europe is a combination of legislative and executive, and the major leading party can get the bills through. Yet America is different. The Treaty of Versailles was reached after a half-year effort, but it failed in getting ratified in U.S. Congress. Europe had different reactions to the 14th point. The British Prime Minister George Lloyd believed Wilson's plan was ambiguous and unpractical. Britain would enforce its opponent to accept the terms based on its own decision. Neither Britain would agree to freedom of seas, for it had a powerful navy. To Wilson's suggestion of non-annexation and non-reparations, France rejected absolutely. For German invasion to France that had wreaked tremendous havocs, and France would surely claim huge reparations. Besides, the lost territories of French, like Alsace and Lorraine, would have to be returned. The French Premier Georges Clemenceau believed Wilson knows so little about Europe, it is tough to communicate with him. In Wilson's mind, his 14 points might be a panacea. God gave only 10 commandments, yet Wilson gave 14. During the talks, Wilson stated that the nature of a human being is kindness, to which Clemenceau showed his doubt. He said to Wilson, "Please don't make me misunderstood. We came to this world also with noble character and aspirations like you did. The reason why we behave like this is because the ruthless hand of the world had shaped us like this. We have to lead, and we have to be strong enough to survive." During lunch, he pointed the roast chicken on the table to Wilson and said, "Why this chicken lies here? Just because it was not strong enough to fight against the person who killed it." President Wilson insisted the League of Nations that he advocates is collective security, and the policy of power balance was unsuccessful. Clemenceau said he didn't object to the League of Nations, and just with some doubts on it. For history in Europe had taught people to be ready for wars at any time. Clemenceau admitted Wilson's vision as great but naive, too young, too simple. Italian Prime Minister Vittorio Orlando withdrew from the peace talks in Paris, for his claim to the territory of Fiume was rejected. His successor was Francisco Neri, who regarded Wilson's League of Nations as a barrier among the nations. He said, "Before Columbus sailed from Europe to seek India, yet he found America instead. For Wilson, he set out from America to Europe for peace, yet resulted in confusion and war." In China issue, Wilson also gave in. China, as one of the victors in First World War, it was supposed to take back its rights in Qingdao, Shandong province. Initially, Wilson supported China, yet later, when Japan threatened to withdraw from peace conference, Wilson agreed to transfer China's rights in Qingdao to Japan, which greatly enraged the Chinese and made them see through the Western power. Soon after, China followed the way of the Soviet Russia, took power by force, and refused to copy the political system in the West. Realism focuses on it is, and idealism focuses on it should be. the reality and the ideal, power and morality, and the two pairs of paradox. Some people say the world to the idealist is just the imagination in their mind, like those stars in the sky, too high to be so bright. The instinct of self-interest in human being makes clashes and wars going on and on. It has been believed that history is a court, whether by hook or by crook. After American independence, there was also entanglement between realism and idealism, with Alexander Hamilton's Federalist for power and great fortunes, and Thomas Jefferson for American dream and freedom. Until today, American foreign policy still goes both with Carroll and Bixby, with advocate of freedom, democracy, and universal values. Meanwhile, they're keeping the most powerful military forces. Idealism is hard to meet its needs by itself. Even some evil forces often disguise themselves with idealism. In May 1938, Adolf Hitler visited Rome. Italy and Nazi Germany both proclaimed their common issue is to promote guarantee for international cooperation, justice, security, and peace. Even fascists and warmongers can mix them up as an angel. The German historian Friedrich Meinecke once stated about idealists, they are only empty when put into real life. They can neither infiltrate the conscience of the politicians nor prevent against the malicious expanding of interest pursuit of current nations. They are mainly aimless complaints and unpractical speculation, and finally lead to hypocrisy and gloom. When idealism appears too flat and too pedantic, realism will inevitably remove the cover of idealism. Yet if not any makeup, realism itself will be left as a naked power struggle. In previous sessions, we talked about international relations theory, hopefully something beneficial. When you review world news to see what happened and to know why it happened that way. Thank you very much and see you next time.